I want to ask a question. What would you call it if someone called for, if there was, let's say there's a high profile public figure who came out and said, I will not wait. I demand that an action be taken which will result in the death of hundreds of millions of people. What do you call it when someone tries to enact a plan that would kill hundreds of millions of people?
Excessive?
Well, no, like
government.
Government?
Democide?
Democide? Isn't democide? Wait, what is democide?
Democide is death by government.
Oh.
It's the number one leading cause. It's the number one leading cause of death in human history.
So I'm just trying to, what's the word for a person?
Genocide, I think, is the word.
Is that it? Are you sure? You're saying Greta Thunberg called for genocide?
You're talking about killing hundreds of millions of people.
Yeah, by taking a direct...
that would be genocide.
I would call that genocide.
So you're saying that Greta Thunberg called for genocide?
Indirectly.
Because I didn't say that word, you did. You see, I tricked you, Ian.
And I wouldn't even say she called
Greta
for it.
Thunberg said, we will not wait till 2030, or said we do not want to wait till 2030 or 2022. We want now a moratorium on fossil fuels.
The problem is people that are screaming
listen.
about what their goal is.
I need to
scream about the plan.
I need to explain this, otherwise, the genocide thing. Greta Thunberg said, we want a moratorium on oil now. We want it done. If we stop using oil, the freight lines, our trains, the food delivery systems, transporting of emergency medicines, all of this just stops. And immediately overnight, you're going to see riots in the street from starving people. You remember what happened in Paris, in France, when Emmanuel Macron was like, we're going to put a tax on petrol, because we're going green or whatever. And then would they get like a year and a half of people rioting because all of a sudden their gas bill was too high because they were trying to tax them to go green. People want to live, I was actually surprised to find out that people are fond of living.
Yeah.
Surprising, huh? So when the government comes in and says, we're not just sacrificing your quality of life, we're restricting your ability to feed your family while we fly on private jets.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you bring up a very important point because when you see the government's response to the climate crisis, it usually means hurting the average person, the middle class person, the low class working person. They're the ones that are going to be paying for it as they literally flying around in their private jets and don't give a darn, and sometimes even profit off of this new idea or innovation that's a carbon tax, a tax on your breath, a tax on your CO2. And I'm like, how more ridiculous could they get? I could just see them sitting around in the table being like, we're just going to tax them for breathing this time.
Whoa. You're forgetting the UK.
Yeah.
They're going to tax you and you're going to need a license for it.
Exactly. And it's just like, if you think government licensing is going to solve anything, I demand you spend 1 week at the DMV. Mandatory if you're ever going to advocate for such a policy.
Now, I will.
I want to finish this because, just recently I made my RV to be, I made my RV off the grid. I installed a lot of solar panels and I learned it doesn't matter how many solar panels you have if you don't have batteries in them that could actually save the power. And when you're talking about the battery technology, it's not there. And I was like, wait, how many pounds do these things weigh? 200 pounds? And I was like, you have to factor in weight, especially if you're in an RV. And the battery technology, you would think you would spend some innovation and some money and some investment and some technology looking into making that better, but it's not there yet.
Ian.
No.
And educate Luke on new better technology.
Oh,
well,
Lord.
I was just reading about graphene batteries.
Boom.
We're talking about superconductors. Yeah. I was actually just reading about condensing graphene or carbon dioxide into graphene. And what you do is, I'll read this. This is from designnews.com. And the title is Researchers Develop Graphene from Carbon Dioxide. It says that the project endeavors to synthesize graphene specifically mimicking photosynthesis by turning carbon dioxide and oxygen, metal-based enzyme ribulose biphosphate carboxylase oxygenase, and you combine the carbon dioxide.
A little bit too in the weeds.
This is a really
confused.
This is a really technical article, but ultimately we're going to have to advance our battery power.
We should.
We have to. I want to contain lightning energy. We should be using lightning as our power source.
The problem is we don't know the charge of lightning.
We got to pound these batteries with it and just store it.
So the reason I shouted you out is graphene. We are moving towards really great advancements in solid state battery technologies, graphene based battery technologies. Here's the crazy thing. We talked about this before. I recently bought I think I bought like 5 graphene composite batteries. They use lithium ion technology, but there's like a lattice of graphene through it, which allows it to charge in like the whole thing. It's 2.5 cell phone charges worth of power, charge up in about 10 to 15 minutes. So normally you plug your phone in, it takes 20, 30 minutes. Now it's half the time
This is
or
like
even
the
faster.
cutting edge, dude. This is like when we had like 32 kilobyte computer RAM stuff. I mean, in 10
So-
years, we're going to be able to charge in like 2 seconds, and we're going to have days of power.
The big problem is batteries, man, they're particularly brutal. I mean, if you get a punctured battery and it blows up on a phone, that's why they tell you on planes you can't bring lithium-ion batteries onto planes.
And they're brutal for the environment. And lithium-ion batteries are primarily made of bauxite, and bauxite is mined 90% of it in the Congo by slave children. And let's be honest about that.
Yeah.
Right? And so we're all going to have electric vehicles. Joe Biden has said that we're all going to have electric vehicles. Well, how many more slave children do we need to employ? Or do you employ slave children? I don't know what the proper term is. Right? These are just the real conversations we have to have about going green.
And also China having these rare earth minerals that they have a monopoly on,
95%.
that they're also just yesterday threatened the United States about setting up an emporium where they won't be sending it to the United States.
But you know they're not really rare.
Well,
the
they're
US,
called rare.
They're called rare earths, but it's just that nobody is mining them properly.
We have them all in America.
Right, but China can do it, so we don't want to do the labor.
Absolutely. So if you wanted to be really green, you would allow us to mine them here. It would be better for the environment. We would have right standards.
Can we just get some of these like environmental leftists to admit we live in a neo-feudalist system where people in Europe and the United States get to live off of the slave labor of the serfs in the Congo mining the bauxite, and in China in the rare earths?
One of my most disliked people in alive right now is a guy named Tom Steyer, who's a billionaire, big environmental cause funder. He vehemently opposes coal in America, goes out of his way to try to shut down coal mines in America, does not want any more coal. He made billions of dollars off of investments in coal in Indonesia and China. So he'll be damned if a guy in West Virginia is gonna mine for coal, but a 9-year-old girl in Western China, totally cool, dude.
No, but don't you get it? He's kicking the ladder down after he made it to the top of the mountain.
Absolutely.
He's like, you can't come up here, I'm rich.
You're right. It really is a feudal system to a certain extent. Look at John Kerry on his private jet, Leonardo DiCaprio on his private jet.
John Kerry flew in a private jet to pick up an environmentalism award. And that's like a fire truck on fire. I'm sorry. I love that
And
analogy.
trust me, if I had married a rich heiress, I too would not sit in the middle seat between like the nursing mom and the girthy millennial. Like I would much rather be on a private jet flying to Iceland.
Yeah, I wouldn't be like Ted Cruz trying to get myself bumped up to first class, which he unsuccessfully did.
No. I heard he did get it.
I heard he did it. That's the
really?
story that I heard right there. But also, Bill Gates flew to the Paris Accords in his private jet.
Yeah.
So not many people know that.
The last big Google pre-COVID, when Google had their big climate change summit in Sicily, and something like 147 private jets flew to it. You know, Prince Harry took one, and everyone 147 private jets flew to the climate change summit. I guess you don't jet pool like you carpool.
Yeah.
Like, hey Tim, I'll pick you up. We'll fly the jet together.
Some do.
No.
Some do. You know, it's fun.
I'll give you a ride anytime on my private jet.
You know what the meeting was really about? I really doubt they all sat down and looked at each other and said, "Man, this global warming is a bad thing. We got to figure out how to save the planet." What they really did was they said, we can't have all these poor people flying on planes.
No.
How do we make sure that we can stay on our private planes? I don't want to lose my private plane.
Yeah.
That's what it is. You get everyone else to sacrifice so you don't have to.
Yes. And that's where we are when it comes to a lot of these green decisions, right? I just want to know who are the people that are going to die. We know who are the people that are going to lose their job. We talk about it. Well, they'll get a green job in the future. Okay, if I'm a Keystone Pipeline worker, I've been now 3 weeks without a paycheck.
Yep.
So when's my green job coming? Blah, blah, blah. The future is green.
I wanted to expand a little on this battery conversation. There's another article by Wired. Are radioactive diamond batteries a cure for nuclear waste? This is a good one you might want to pull up. Looks simple.
Well, we have there was a big breakthrough recently on solid state battery technology, which apparently would revolutionize everything. It's like higher energy density. So
this stuff takes the spent nuclear rods from nuclear power plants, which normally we have to store in like boxes that are just
in Yucca
we
Mountain
bury 'em.
for 1,000 years. Now you encase them in glass and you use it as a heat source for electricity, and they last 1,000 years.
Yeah.
This came out August of 2020. I mean, this is literally here. We just need a president or a system that understands it and wants to push it.
It's political.
Yeah.
Right? That's the
I just think they're ignorant.
No one look in the world of politics. These people are looking at what's going to get them elected. Nuclear is scary. We've already seen the giant lizard breathing radioactive fire and blowing up buildings, and now people are scared that they're going to, grow a third eye or whatever, and they think nuclear energy is the apocalypse. Nope. My understanding is that nobody died in 3 Mile Island.
No.
Right?
No one even got a cold.
Chernobyl, however, was failures of the Communist Party.
Absolutely.
And it was, look, what happened with Chernobyl was complicated but political. It was war. It was Cold War. And the Soviets were rushing full speed. They had a system where people would, like, when you live under authoritarianism, you just say whatever you need to say to survive. And so when they were having more and more problems, the people are like, yeah, everything's fine. And that's what they kept doing. And then it got really bad. The whole thing went up, and there's a lot of problems there. Don't get me wrong. That's scary. That's a major crisis. But hold on. What's worse? All of the nuclear energy disasters we've seen so far, or all of the oil spills, Deepwater Horizon, the oil slicks and the damage that it's caused, the dead zones it creates in the oceans. Look, I think fossil fuels are important, and I think the challenge right now is that we have, what we at 7.8 billion people. We're trying to make sure they don't die because we want them to live, but while recognizing it takes a lot of energy to make sure these people are getting food, they're getting heat. Some people don't have food or heat. Yeah. And we actually try to subsidize that to help them because we don't want people to die. But the problem now is you've got people saying curtail the use of our most efficient form of energy so far. Okay, well then all these people are going to die.
Yeah. And that is the adult conversation we need to have. There is no perfect fuel source. I wish there was. There's no perfect energy source. I wish there were. But I'm not Plato, right? It is not me versus this ideal. We have to live in the reality. And the reality is everything has its drawbacks. But for the price point, for the efficiency, and for the quality of life we demand. And this is my biggest argument when it comes to the fossil fuel industry and getting rid of it, is that is where they want to sacrifice. Cost doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if we pay what Germany pays. Efficiency doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if we can't store the electricity. That's why you hear authoritarians say, well, Kamala Harris was asked, should we talk about dietary regulations? And she said, I think we should have a conversation about that. Let's talk about those cheeseburgers. The government's going to regulate our food? Of course they are.
Bill Gates said no more meat.
Bill Gates also bought the most amount of farmland than anyone else in the United States, specifically because he wants everyone to eat fake meat.
Live in the pot and eat the bugs.
Absolutely.
Like
what is it? I will
burgers?
not live in the pot. I will not eat the bugs.
There
are these people.
Do you know where that's from? Is that a meme? I will not live in the pot. I will not eat the bugs.
But there are a class of people that think that they have the authority over us to determine the quality of life we want. And I think that is how you really get a revolution. That is how you get bloodshed.
I would like to point out, though, I actually think that the idea of having a pod is pretty cool. Just as we're talking about in the middle of the woods, got my own little place, got my own little home.
That's what I'm doing.
Oh, yeah, nice. Yeah. And the other thing too is, I see this meme. It's like, I will not live in the pot. I will not eat the bugs. And I'm kind of like, why is it bad to eat bugs? Like, look, there's, what is it? Like 85% of the planet eats bugs. You don't have to eat bugs if you don't want to. I think it's fair if you say, I don't want to eat bugs. I'll bet that's cool. I don't eat bugs, but I'm also kind of like, food's food.
But like lobsters are bugs.
Yeah, big insects.
Yeah. Well, another thing we have to kind of comprehend here is that Bill Gates invests his money into specifically creating fake meat. He then goes on 60 Minutes, and Anderson Cooper's like, wow, this is such a great idea. I love this idea, as he's promoting fake meat.
The fake meat has no fat in it. That's the problem.
There's a lot of problems surrounding this, especially genetically modified food, which Bill Gates has extensive ties to, especially to corporations like Monsanto that have a horrendous human rights record, that have a horrendous record of actively, knowingly hurting people and still doing it for profit.
I just think the idea that the second or third richest person in the world, whatever he is today, he's second or third, and a Vanderbilt heir sat down together and they talked about the sacrifices we have to make. Yeah.
A millionaire and a billionaire deciding what we should not live with.
We're going to
and
make.
A republic is a well-armed populace contesting that vote.
Holy cow. Yeah. Like that's some scary stuff right there. Yeah. I don't want to be part of that world. I'm like the Little Mermaid. I don't want to be part of your world.
I want to We talked about the Great Reset. You're familiar with, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And
scary
a lot of people are wondering if they're doing it on purpose. And I'm like, listen, we don't need to ask whether they're doing it on purpose. What they're doing is in effect creating the Great Reset they've talked about. Yeah. So you want to get conspiratorial, you can find. We don't have to be. We can just say, I don't care what their intention is. The result is this Great Reset. They're locking us down. They say it's for the pandemic. Sure. This is what's happening. Now, that being said, part of me, you know, because we had Jack Murphy on the show, and I mentioned they want people to live kind of, you know, more in the country and more back to nature, like rolling up their sleeves and chopping their own lumber. And Jack was like, what's wrong with that? So there's a part of this where it's like, listen, I believe in freedom. If you want to eat your burger with ketchup schlopped all over it or whatever you like on your burger, mayo, pickles, lettuce, you know, cheese or whatever, you go ahead and do it. I, however, think there's a lot to be gained from regular people who are addicted to this system getting out, learning how to work, going to the woods, actually learning how to raise chickens, raise meat, pig, cow, whatever, and just being responsible for themselves for once in their lives. Yeah. Too many Americans are gluttonous, living in big cities, demanding the government do the work or take the labor from other people to pay for them.
Yeah.
They're not...
You're absolutely right. I am born and raised in New York City. I lived in D.C. for a very, very long time. I have a year now. My fiance and I got a little farm, and we're doing
chickens?
That. Chickens, sheep, turkeys, peacocks.
Aren't chickens awesome?
I love them. Yeah, they're fun.
What do the peacocks do?
They're for
noise?
They make a lot of noise. They are ultimately for profit.
Can you sell them?
We will. We bought them as eggs,
awesome.
and we will sell them. You know, like really rich people. We're the poorest people in town. Really rich people will want them for their lawn to walk around and strut like Flannery O'Connor.
Amazing.
So we'll sell them to you at 3 years of age.
You do have peahens as well.
We have the females. Yes,
Peahen.
And they lay eggs.
Called, right?
You eat the
Peahen.
eggs.
They're not old enough yet to lay eggs. Well, I mean, hopefully the eggs will be fertilized and we'll have more of them.
Do you have roosters for your chickens?
I have too many roosters, and
aren't they hilarious?
They are, and they can be very mean.
Yeah,
I know, but it's funny.
But
like this roosters running at you and like yelling at you, and you're
got scrapes all over me. But the point I was going to make is I was that DC feat. You know, like going to brunch and getting a reservation was the big thing, and you didn't do manual labor. And I have for the last year, and this goes back to Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, who argued how it was man better, but it goes back to Locke and Hobbes, it goes back to Plato, Aristotle. Where is mankind better situated? And I have been thinking a lot about how I do feel like a better human being because I have to make fence posts and I have to mend things and I get dirty and I have to play with chicken feces and it's gross and it's work and it's labor and and it's freezing cold and you have a hangover and you smoke too much the night before and your lungs are killing you, but the animals need to eat and they're in the barn and they are hungry and it does make you a better I am a better person in the country. I really am.
Isn't there a great feeling from eating your own homegrown eggs?
Yes, it's very cool.
So amazing. So when I lived in Miami, we had chickens, and I'd go out in the morning, I'd grab a couple of the eggs, bring them back in, and I would bake with that. Yeah. It was awesome. I was like, this is so cool. Like these things are out in my yard like eating bugs. Yeah. And then they poop these things out, and I put it in my pancakes. It's great.
Now I have a leg up though for anyone who's watching the show who's like, so I can start a farm. My fiance is a legit Aussie outback cowboy who grew up on 25,000 acres, and he did this his whole life. So I had help.
You're cheating.
I had cheating. Right? Like he thinks this is a joke. Like, you know, we have
easy.
A couple sheep and chickens. Like this isn't. I had 5,000 head of cattle on my ranch. So I have a leg up, but still, it's a great. It makes you a better person.
It's fun and it's exciting and it's different and you learn so much about life. I lived on a pig farm this summer. Very gratifying. It smelled a little bit, but I learned a lot of really interesting things about nature and how the world works that you would never understand in a big city.
And you know what we have is a couple of, sorry to interrupt you, we have all heritage breeds, who we talked a couple of times about GMOs. Right, there are these breeds that are dying, and we're doing our little part to save them because we have crossbred them so many times for meat, for large-breasted chicken, for fattier pigs. So we have all heritage breeds, and they're not as pretty, they're maybe not as tasty, but they're authentic and they're real and they're fun looking. They're funny looking. They're kind of ugly.
Yeah, the genetics.
Kunis,
people need to understand the genetic splicing and the genetic kind of larger kind of organizations that are putting together these wild experiments are absolutely mind-boggling and scary, to say the least.
Yeah.
My friend accidentally became a pig farmer because the government said kill all the pigs. Right when COVID hit, they were like, well, you know, rather be safe than sorry, kill all of them. He went to a local farm, picked them up illegally, and then brought them to his farm. And then we learned, like, oh yeah, these are, you know, specifically bred pigs just to get fat.
Yeah.
They're not to run around. They're not to live. They're just going to be sitting here and eating, and that's it.
Here's the question I have for your average rural living conservative. Wouldn't you like for just once in their lives these urban liberals to understand why you need a weapon, why you need a gun when you're out in the middle of nowhere and you got some animals and you're worried about feral hogs or you're worried about coyotes, and you got to protect those you care about, not just your animals but your family? Wouldn't you want them to experience for once in their life why they have to chop lumber, why they have to go out and make sure they get enough wood for the stove, because you're not going to have necessarily the propane delivery in time if the roads are slicked up? Wouldn't you just want them to experience hard work? The problem is, well, I think it sounds good teaching people responsibility, getting them out to go, you know, actually learn how to survive and be responsible for themselves. The people who are orchestrating these big changes, the people who are calling for these changes, don't want people to actually be free and independent.
Yeah.
They're advocating for taking away the weapons of these individuals. And I know a lot of people say, Tim, the Second Amendment isn't about hunting and stuff like that. I know. It's literally about securing a free state. But one of the biggest reasons anybody would need to know how and be trained with a weapon is you've got to protect your home.
Yeah.
You live in the middle of nowhere where you don't got cops. But more importantly, you hear the coyotes out in the back. And what happens when they come for your chickens? You pepper them up with some bird shot or something, scare them away, or whatever it is you do.
Or even feral hogs. When they come in large droves. They come in large numbers, and a high-capacity magazine is something you're going to need. Having a 10-round magazine sometimes won't suffice and will put you in danger.
You'll have to have a bunch of magazines.
Well, even then, reloading and loading takes a while, and during stressful situations, people mess that up. So again, it's nonsensical, and it's going to hurt people on so many different levels. And you bring up very important points.
I try to shame the coyotes into not doing it. I give them bad reviews. I tweet negative things.
Do you try to cancel them?
I do.
Yes.
So like, shame on you, and I take pictures and I tell them, you know, we're going to kick them out. But
you're going to tell their boss on them.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.